Okay, New Guard, welcome. So much going on in the news today, especially on YouTube with this UFOs over London. There's about 2 million hits in 3 days. What I wanted to do was bring down an expert. So many videos, so much confusion. What's right, what's wrong? I said, forget it. I got on the horn and reached into my bag, got an expert down here. We got Diedrich Jonk here with us. Diedrich Jonk, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here. Thanks for coming down to the studio.
You bet.
He's an expert photo analyst. I've known the man for many years. Thousands of hours producing, editing both amateur videos like the one we're going to talk about today, professional footage. He's peaked the summit at Mount Everest. This is a guy who has done the most high-end video analysis that I know of. We've heard of people in the past, Jim Delatosos and people of that nature. Everyone seems to be lost right now. Then this video surfaces, UFOs over London. Thing gets tons of hits, 2+ million hits and growing. I decided let's get him down into the studio and find out what we think this may or may not be. So Diedrich, let me give you the floor here. I sent you this video just yesterday basically and told you to take a look at it. And why don't you tell this audience, if you could, what you did first, when you first saw it, and your first thoughts when you first viewed the video.
The first thing I did, I watched it on YouTube. I downloaded the highest resolution video that I could pull off of YouTube. I pulled it into my editing software and I watched it forward and backwards. And my first impression was this, anybody could do this. Any amateur with a fairly simple editing program could easily put a couple white dots on a 2-minute piece of footage and call it a UFO.
Okay, let me stop you. Go ahead, finish your thought.
But as I kind of got a little bit more into it and I started looking a little bit closer and really putting my analytical brain on, I kind of got a little bit to be impressed, actually.
Intrigued.
Yeah.
Why don't we do this? Let's run the video in its entirety. There are things about it from a ufology standpoint that intrigued me and got a lot of people's wheels spinning. Let's run the footage and then let's break it down. Real choppy, real amateur, right? You've seen tons of
I like the technique.
Yeah, very Blair Witch.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, now the first thing that intriguing is a squadron.
Boom.
Okay, so what we're seeing here, if you're a person in aeronautics or if you're a person in any sort of ufology type study, is you're seeing a squadron, a formation.
Let me just rewind that because it kind of comes out real quick.
Okay. Some people in the aeronautical field who work in the military-industrial complex might say there's plasma array around some of these types of vehicles. We have no idea. But you're saying what when you're seeing this?
I'm just seeing three little lights that, three little white dots in the blue sky, which is editing 101 at any university.
If I take fraud out of the equation, I'm seeing intelligent control of aircraft. Whether it's military, whether it's extraterrestrial, I'm seeing intelligently controlled craft in some sort of formation with some sort of agenda. Fair enough.
So there's those three, and then a couple, what is it, 1, 2 more kind of fly out of
more,
there.
right? Stragglers. And then we see something that totally takes it to another level. And you can see there's obviously different people here, not associated with each other as far as we know. There's another straggler. And then I believe we're going to see
a bigger one. There we go.
There's
the top of the screen.
Okay, so there's the icing on the cake here, which is a larger craft. Now
it pauses and then zips away. Here we go. Get ready for it to zip out. And
right. So it does a maneuver that is virtually impossible for any military-style craft that anyone knows of on this planet. Does a right angle turn probably at Mach 285. Okay, not to mention the way that it's bouncing around, the way that it's maneuvering is consistent with utilizing any sort of electromagnetic type propulsion type systems probably. So whether or not you're hip to that or not is not your game. What we brought you in the studio today for is to say, okay, fine. This is what a ufologist sees. at this footage, what does a photo analysis person do to try to break this down in the most granular fashion to see if there is any fraud involved?
So the first thing I see is this guy's shooting into the sun. Right? We got the sun coming out right here. And the sun going into a camera lens will cause all sorts of reflections. So those little white dots, I thought they might be a little reflection. There could be some dust or debris inside the lens, and the sunlight getting into the lens, reflecting off there, could cause bizarre little apparitions.
Okay.
But then the movement of the apparitions, the movement of these things, that would not be consistent with something reflecting off the sun.
Correct. And we've seen that.
The reflections would be more stationary. They wouldn't be zipping around like that.
What about the altitude? Is there a way to look at the footage, if we can back up? First of all, let's say it was some sort of debris. This part of the footage I could understand to a certain degree, like you said. Then it does this maneuver. We can see another very general type situation is to see a flying saucer utilizing this position, this vertical standpoint in its descent or movement. We don't know why, but it's got your typical saucer shape. It definitely looks like it might have some sort of plasma field around it for energy purposes. But then again, like you said, the sun plays a factor, right? What about the actual squadron? Wouldn't that do away with some of the issue of the debris? If we can back up to this squadron-like formation?
Yeah, the coincidence, it would be just too coincidental to have 3 pieces of debris within the lens perfectly positioned, almost geometrically at one point in time.
Can we back up to get some of the squadron in there? It's almost in the beginning here, where you see...
There we go.
There we go. So here we go. And this is your, this is your triangle-shaped craft that so many people around the globe have talked about. This could be one craft. We don't know. Or it could be what looks to be, and you can see another one right here coming up, right? Looks to me as though there is a squadron of craft.
Yeah, the speed at which the little lights move across the frame it tells me that it's not debris.
Right. We've seen orbs,
yeah.
And we've seen the ghost shows where they show these orbs, and we can tell they're dust particles and that sort of thing. That's not this, you're saying?
No.
Okay.
The other thing I could point out, just talking about editing wizardry and post-production wizardry, is that on an amateur level, yes, sticking a pinpoint piece of light on a blue sky is quite easy. But when you have to move that item, whatever piece of whatever thing you're inserting into the frame that wasn't already there, to move it behind clouds, or to move it behind other objects that you actually are truly in the frame, that's when it starts to become more difficult. So there is, I do have, I'm intrigued. I'm certainly intrigued.
Well, okay, next. We're not obviously at ILM right now.
Yeah.
But the crescendo of this video, and the major question that I have for you as a video analysis expert, is this craft that we're seeing here, whether or not it's larger or closer than the rest of the squadron, right? Is the filmmaker or the forger utilizing the cloud cover as an exit strategy? Or is that craft, this craft right here, actually moving inside the cloud or behind the cloud? And you were able to break this down frame by frame. Let's see what you were able to see and what your thoughts were. Yeah,
let's look at it at just a couple different magnifications. So here we are at 200%. Well, actually, let's start at 100. So here's at 100%. It's already, it's already kind of fuzzy. It's already kind of sloppy. there's no smoking gun here. It's a little bit difficult to tell. Let's zoom in some more.
Right. Well, we know it's not an airplane.
Let's
We
go
know
in.
it's not a bird.
Let's go in 800%. So here's the orb just to the left there. It hits this first piece of cloud, and it looks like it kind of just mushes in there. We can't really tell if it's in front of the cloud, behind the cloud, and as we kind of go frame by frame, these are actual frames. So it's moving pretty fast, you know, because it's jumping a good portion across my screen here. And it's basically 3 frames at which it's about to hit the cloud, frame 1, 2, 3, and now it's gone. So here's where it's just really hitting into the cloud, and it's, you know, it looks like the cloud just enveloped it right there. I can't really tell if it's in front of it or behind it.
But we don't see any sort of pixel fakery as far as angles or the use of some sort of Photoshop insertion, or at least on an obvious scale.
No,
So
nothing.
The blending's well done, correct? If
Yeah.
It is forged.
Yeah, the blending's well done. It's not. There's no obvious fakery here that I can tell.
Well, as a caveat, just so that the people watching from the New Guard realize, the photographer of this film has given us the rights to utilize this footage that we're looking at right now together, to analyze it, to try to get some answers together, and he's going to remain anonymous right now. At a later point, maybe he will come forward, and maybe we'll have him on the program. For right now, this is where we're at.
Yeah, let me point out another thing.
Go ahead.
You know, when you're looking at when you're doing these sorts of things, it's nice to compare it to something that you already know. So, do we know what a UFO looks like? Can you say, oh, well, let's just line up what a UFO should look like on this screen, and now let's compare it? We don't. You know,
Well, that brings up all sorts of interesting
that's
questions.
your department. That's your department.
That's my department.
Yeah.
That's their department too. The point is that does that look like anything that anyone can look to definitively and say, oh, you sure that's an ice particle? Should we get Seth Shostak and Bill Nye, the science guy, and some other fruitcake to come on and say, oh yeah, that's a piece of space trash, or it's a satellite? Obviously, that's not what it is. These things have been popping up over New York, closing airports in China, and now this, just in the past year alone. Closing airports with no explanation from the government or the military. So the silency policy is doing a lot of telling. Let's put it that way. Not telling tells us plenty.
So, you know, again, when I first saw this, you sent it to me. I looked at it on YouTube. My first reaction was like, oh, it's a white blob on a blue sky. Any Joe could do this.
Sure.
You know, but the more and more I look at it, you know, especially when we have it magnified here, frame by frame, you know, I start to notice little details, like the intensity of the light changes frame by frame. The hues are graded differently. We've got some yellow, fades to a cream, and then a black. It's sort of dark in the middle with sort of a little bit brighter, more fluorescent, or a little more fluorescent-y white light on one side, and kind of a little bit more colored on the left with some red there. And these color profiles change from frame to frame. And that's...
Would this be an indication of an actual structure having sunlight being reflected off of it?
Certainly. These hues, you know, they're very realistic, and they change from frame to frame. So again, if this is a forgery, it's the more and more I look at it, the more and more I'm impressed with the level of detail and the skill required.
Well, like I said, sometimes the answers lie in the silence. And who is telling us from an official standpoint what these things are? And the answer is no one. And there's a reason for that, my friend. Diedrich Jonk, thanks for being on the show tonight. Everyone else, Jesse Randolph with New Guard Network. We'll see you next time. let me give you the floor here. I sent you this video just yesterday, basically, and told you to take a look at it. And why don't you tell this audience, if you could, what you did first, when you first saw it, and your first thoughts when you first viewed the video.
The first thing I did, I watched it on YouTube. I downloaded the highest resolution video that I could.
Jonk here with us. Diedrich Jonk, welcome to the show. Thank you
Thanks.
for being here. Thanks for coming down to the studio.
You bet.
He's an expert photo analyst. I've known the man for many years. Thousands of hours producing, editing both amateur videos like the one we're going to talk about today, professional footage. He's peaked the summit at Mount Everest. This is a guy who has done... Okay, New Guard, welcome. So much going on in the news today, especially on YouTube with this UFOs over London. There's about 2 million hits in 3 days. What I wanted to do was bring down an expert. So many videos, so much confusion, what's right, what's wrong. I said, forget it. I got on the horn and reached into my bag, got an expert down here. We got Diedrich, the most high-end video analysis that I know of. We've heard of people in the past, Jim Delatosos and people of that nature. Everyone seems to be lost right now. Then this video surfaces, UFOs over London. Thing gets tons of hits, 2+ million hits and growing. I decided let's get him down into the studio and find out what we think this may or may not be. So Diedrich,